Last walk. It started like any other night. After another stressful day at work, I decided a late-night walk would clear my head. The air was crisp, the streets quiet, and the moon hung low in the sky like a watchful sentinel. I grabbed my jacket and left my apartment, stepping into the stillness of the suburban neighborhood. It was something I did often, walk to unwind, let the cool air ease my tension. But that night was different. That night, something was watching. The first sign that something was off hit me about 20 minutes into my walk. I was on Birchwood Avenue, the familiar row of modest houses lined up in neat suburban symmetry, when I saw it, a shadow, quick and elusive, darting across the street up ahead. I stopped mid-stride, narrowing my eyes at the spot where it had vanished. Nothing. I shook my head and laughed quietly to myself. "It's just the dark playing tricks," I muttered. Still, I quickened my pace, suddenly aware of how unnaturally quiet the night felt. Not even the wind was rustling the trees. I turned the corner onto Elm Street, a long stretch of road that led toward the park. It was darker here. The streetlights were spaced farther apart, leaving long gaps of shadow. I usually avoided this route because it felt eerie, even in daylight, but for some reason, I felt drawn to it. I told myself it was just curiosity, nothing more. As I walked deeper into the gloom, I began to hear something. At first it was faint, so soft I thought it might have been my imagination. A low, rhythmic tapping, like footsteps echoing in the distance. I stopped again and turned around, scanning the street behind me. No one. I strained my ears, holding my breath. There it was again, a steady, deliberate tapping, closer now. It wasn't my imagination. Someone or something was following me. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach, and I continued walking, my heart beating faster with each step. I glanced over my shoulder every few seconds, hoping to catch a glimpse of the source of the sound. But all I saw was darkness stretching behind me. The tapping grew louder, sharper, as if whatever was behind me was closing in. I was sure of it now. Something was following me. My pace quickened until I was almost jogging, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The tapping turned into a distinct clicking, unnatural, like nails scraping against concrete. My mind raced, conjuring up images of things that shouldn't exist. Was it an animal? A person? Something worse? I reached the park entrance, a small iron gate that led into a dense patch of trees and winding paths. I don't know why, but I thought going into the park was a good idea. Maybe I could lose whatever was behind me in the maze of trees. Without thinking, I slipped through the gate and ran into the park, my footsteps crunching loudly on the gravel path. The clicking followed me. It was closer now, almost right behind me, though I didn't dare look back. My mind screamed at me to run faster, but my legs felt like they were moving through thick molasses. I could feel something breathing down my neck, cold, rancid air brushing against the back of my head. And then it stopped. I stumbled to a halt, gasping for air, and turned around. The path behind me was empty. The trees stood still, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands in the pale moonlight. But there was no sign of the thing that had been chasing me. I listened, nothing but the sound of my own labored breathing. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. As I turned to continue deeper into the park, I saw it. A figure stood in the middle of the path, about 30 feet ahead, silhouetted against the moonlit clearing. At first glance, it looked human. A man, maybe, but something was wrong. Its limbs were too long, its posture unnaturally rigid. It didn't move, didn't react to my presence. It just stood there watching. I took a step back, my instincts screaming at me to run the other way, but my feet wouldn't move. I couldn't look away from the figure, couldn't tear my eyes from the way its head tilted slightly, as though it was examining me, deciding what to do next. "Who are you?" I managed to croak, though my voice sounded weak and far away. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it took a step toward me, its long legs stretching unnaturally, and the clicking started again. But it wasn't coming from behind me now. It was coming from the figure. Every step it took was accompanied by that awful clicking sound, like bones snapping, like claws scraping the ground. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering in my chest. The figure was getting closer, moving faster now, its steps jerky and inhuman. Panic surged through me, and I turned to run, but the path ahead seemed to stretch endlessly before me, as if the park was warping, twisting into something unnatural. The clicking grew louder, more frenzied. I could feel it right behind me now. So close I could almost feel its breath again. That same cold, putrid air. I dared one glance over my shoulder, and my heart nearly stopped. It was no longer walking. It was crawling, its body contorted in ways that defied logic, its limbs bending and twisting at impossible angles. Its eyes, God, its eyes, were hollow pits of darkness, empty and void, like twin abysses staring straight into my soul. I ran faster than I ever had in my life, my lungs burning, legs aching. The park seemed to stretch on forever, no exit in sight. The thing was gaining on me. I could hear its raspy breathing now, feel its presence looming over me like a dark cloud. Suddenly, the path opened up, and I burst into the clearing. Ahead of me, barely visible through the trees, was the gate. Safety. I sprinted toward it, not daring to look back. My vision blurred, my muscles screaming in protest. But I pushed forward, desperate. I reached the gate and threw myself through it, slamming it shut behind me. The moment the iron bars clanged together, the clicking stopped. Silence. I collapsed onto the sidewalk, my body trembling uncontrollably. My chest heaved with ragged breaths as I stared back into the park. The figure was gone, but the silence was worse. I didn't wait to see if it would return. I scrambled to my feet and ran all the way home, not stopping until I was behind my locked door. But even now, hours later, I can still hear it. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. The clicking.